Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Escape Comics' The Alien Ship from Jumping High Five. Escape Comics' The Alien Ship is an escape room game, and as such, this is one of those reviews where I'm going to be very, very vague in order to avoid spoiling absolutely anything for you, or at least as much as possible. I would say this is a 99.8% spoiler-free review. I'll be showing you some basic components, nothing you won't see almost immediately upon playing the game, and I'll be loosely talking about certain aspects as loosey-goosey as I can possibly do so to avoid spoiling anything for you. But if you want complete and total mystery, this might not be the review for you because it's going to be 99.8% complete and total mystery. That 0.2% is, I have to talk about this in order to actually review it. To that end, Escape Comics' The Alien Ship is just that. This is a comic over here. You're going to be going through a comic which is going to give you an adventure, and you're going to be reading through this, and then every few pages you'll be presented with a little bit of a stop as you then pull out a matching envelope and try to solve the associated puzzle. So it's narrative, puzzle, narrative, puzzle, narrative, puzzle. Those envelopes are going to be things like this over here. There are a whole bunch of them in the box. You'll go ahead, you'll open it up, unwind that string, grab the various components you need, and then attempt to solve the various mystery. The mysteries are generally going to have you trying to punch in a code. You'll find the matching puzzle on this decoder. So for example, that might be the symbol for the puzzle, and then you'll go ahead and line up whatever you think are the right symbols, which will produce a number card. That number card will take you to the answer cards, and then it's going to check to see if you're on a certain puzzle, and then ultimately tell you whether you got things right or not. Along the way, there's going to be the hints. The hints come in the form of these cards. Again, if you're trying to solve that puzzle over here, you'd look through these hints over here, and you'd say, okay, great, I'm going to go ahead and look at a hint and see what this has to tell me. This is one of those areas where the game is actually pretty nice about the fact that there is a scoring system at play, and they tell you that, hey, if you look at a hint and you already knew the thing that the hint tells you, you don't get penalized for that, which makes sense. It takes a lot of the risk, assuming you care about the score, which I don't care about the score that much, but it's nice to have an indicator of how you're doing. It is nice that if I look at a card and it's like, combine the yellow and the red, you're like, the yellow and the red, I already did that. You don't lose the negative points on the hint cards that you didn't benefit from. You only lose the negative points on the hint cards that actually taught you something that you didn't know. And there are a sequence of hints that will slowly lead you in the right direction until they eventually just straight up give you the solution, and you're like, oh, I guess I could have done that. And then you go ahead and know what to do. That's the basic arc of the game. You are in space. I'm not going to tell you the story too much, but you're dealing with an alien spaceship and then trying to deal with the various things that are going to happen along the way. You go through a set of stories. You go through a set of puzzles. The puzzles are going to have very thematic elements that they're going to give you to really kind of immerse you in this world of giving you a lot of different... Again, spoiler free. They'll give you stuff that you can play with that feels appropriate for the situation, and then you'll have to try to solve the puzzle. That's what the game is doing. Do that until you get to the end, score yourself, see how well you did, and then you go ahead and get to see, well, you're a commander or a commissioner or whatever different tiers they have for how well you actually solved the escape room puzzle. That is how you play escape room comics. Which brings me to my review, which these are very hard to do because in general, other than saying, hey, I liked it, hey, I didn't like it, there's not a lot I can really do without being spoiler free. While trying to avoid every possible spoiler that I can, there's only so much room I have to actually navigate that conversation. But I'm going to do the best that I can because, well, I'm going to try to do the best that I can. So I'll start with the basics, and I'll cover this again in final thoughts. I liked Escape Comics' The Alien Ship. It's a good escape room game. If you've played any games like the Exit series is a good example, if you play those games that kind of have that tiered arc of here's a challenge, here's a puzzle, here's the decoder, like this is very reminiscent of the Exit series of board games. Is it called Exit? Exit the game, right? I think there's the Unlock series and the Exit series. Yeah, it's the Exit series. It's very reminiscent of the Exit series, although it's definitely more component heavy. The nature of having this giant box over here with all the individual envelopes with a lot of various elements and components does mean that you get more thematic room for navigation. That's not just, flipping through a book and looking at pictures or whatnot. It's a lot more component heavy than as opposed to being card heavy. So there's more of an experience going on here, but it certainly builds off of that structure. So if you like that kind of escape room game, this is definitely giving you that kind of escape room game. It's giving you those challenges, those puzzles, those answers, and those hints all to get you through the adventure. And it does a pretty good job of it. When we start to get into me trying to give more detailed feedback, it's going to be tricky. I'll say that to start with, I don't know if I love the comic book part of the whole adventure, meaning you're frequently reading through a story. So this immerses you into a story that I just don't care about. I'm here, when I play escape room games, I'm more here for the puzzle, and the story is more of a background thing for me, and you are reading you're reading a full comic book, well, full is relative, but how many pages is this? A 28-page comic book with a lot of backstory that I just don't know if I cared about. It's whimsical, it's nice, you might certainly enjoy it, and I didn't not enjoy it. It just means that in between puzzles, I'm like, let me read 2 pages, and then go back to the puzzle. Let me read 2 pages, and then go back to the puzzle. So I appreciate what they're trying to do. I don't know if I'm the target audience for that extra amount of it. I just like the sequence of puzzles that I go through where I have to go ahead and solve this and solve that. Which brings us to the puzzles part of thing. The puzzles overall, I would say they were a good level of challenging. I think twice I felt the need to go ahead and look at hint cards across all the puzzles. 2 times I felt the need to look at hint cards. 1 time I actually needed it, and the other time I was basically on the right path. I had figured it out. It just, again, without being specific, what I had figured out wasn't working for me, and so I kind of needed the hint to tell me that what I was figured out was the right thing, and then it's like, okay, great, that is indeed what I thought it was. It just wasn't clicking properly. Again, I can't be specific without giving spoilers. So I would say that, for me, the difficulty was in a good place where most of the time I felt challenged, and the few times I needed a hint, only one of those times that I actually need a hint, and even that one, in hindsight, I was like, I could have. Honestly, I can be semi-specific here. The game gave a hint in the game, not like a hint card. In that specific puzzle, the game gave a hint that actually threw me off the path, and then by looking at the actual hints, it brought me back onto the path. Without being specific, imagine the game had said, look at door 2, and door 2 had nothing to do with anything. That's a very bad analogy. The game had threw me off the pathway. Either way, I think it was not too difficult is what my main point is. On the reverse side of that, I do think it does lean a little bit on the easier side. While there were a lot of puzzles that did feel challenging enough that I felt like I solved it, I would say that when I'm weighing this up against other escape room games I've played, whether Exit, whether Unlock, whether more deluxe experiences like the Emerald Flame or things like that, I definitely felt this was a little less rewarding. The challenges were present enough at times. At other times, it felt a little bit more basic. And again, I don't think they were easy. I would not quantify this as an easy game, but I would say that when you're grading various escape room games, this is on one of those easier tiers for me. Still a rewarding enough experience, but definitely a little easier based on the various escape room games I've played. The last thing I'll say is that some puzzles I did find frustrating. Now, I don't know how much of this was a prototype issue or not. And again, I can't really be specific about the nature of them because it would spoil things in certain ways. But I would say that from a component issue, at least 2 puzzles I found personally frustrating to try to solve and deal with, meaning I knew what to do, and I did them, and I confirmed them on the cards over here to make sure that I was correct about them. But due to the components, they were a little less clear than I would like. Again, I don't have a great way of trying to give you an example of what I mean. The best example I can give is imagine you were solving a puzzle and the pieces didn't fit nicely when you click them together. Imagine that was the case. Actually, now that I think about it, there were three times that happened. Imagine the pieces didn't fit nicely when you click the puzzle together, and so you're like, I think this is the right piece. It sort of fits, but it doesn't fit perfectly. So is it or is it not the right piece? Like, imagine you were trying to solve a puzzle that way. And that happened 3 times in the various puzzles I solved, where component limitations made it so that the correct answer wasn't clear because the components weren't working perfectly with the correct answer. Again, I'm trying to be vague, sorry about that, but the tricky part is I don't know if that's purely a prototype issue. This is a prototype, rules, components, subject change. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. So I don't know if that's a prototype issue or if that will happen in the final components as well. I am hopeful and optimistic it is purely a prototype issue, but as always, even in my prototype reviews, I have to cover everything I went through because that is like if that same thing happens in the end product, I have to at least say that I experienced this here as well. So I'm hoping it's just a prototype issue. That's overall the I think I have one last thing I'd say. Whenever there are escape room games, sometimes they try to do things clever that break the mold of the patterns they've been building towards. And this is in general about escape room games. I'd say it's very often present in the Unlock series and the Exit series, where they have certain formulaic stuff that they're doing, and then somewhere along the way they break that formula to give you a challenge that can be harder. It can be very rewarding when you solve it, but because they kind of build you up to expect certain formulas, When they break the formula, you're like, I know you didn't say you can't do that, but it does feel like you are undermining the way you set me to expect the structure of the game. Again, being vague. That happens in this game. That idea that there's a formula for the way things work, and then at certain points they're like, formula broken, that can happen. I don't mind that in general, but I don't mind it only once I know that the game will do that. So for example, the first time I ever had an unlock game that did this to me, the first time I found it very frustrating. I was like, I didn't know that was something that would happen. But then from there onwards, going forward, I knew that unlock games were willing to do things that were outside the formula, and so that put it in the realm of stuff I could consider. So again, essentially speaking, going back to that puzzle analogy, if I'm trying to assemble a puzzle, if I know that there's a puzzle piece that is not in the box that I have to find somewhere else, that changes the way I approach the puzzle. If I think all the puzzle pieces are in the box, that changes the way I approach the puzzle. So you just have to know that there are going to be points in this game where they break the formula they set you up to expect, and that might make things a little bit more confusing or frustrating. Again, vague reviews. I both like reviewing things, and also I hate when I have to review things where I can't talk about the thing. It's a weird situation. But that said, let's go to final thoughts here. Escape Comics: The Alien Ship. Again, I have a few things that I mentioned as far as mini complaints about them, but I don't want to undersell the fact that I had a good time playing through this. I felt it was generally appropriately difficult, leaning a little bit on the easy side. Overall, I enjoyed the experience. The reading part, while it's not my preferred preference, it's a few pages here and there. It didn't really slow me down too much, and I certainly felt clever at points while playing through this. Overall, I definitely recommend it. I think it's a fun experience that if you like escape room games, you can definitely get a very decent experience out of this that is a bit more immersive than some other escape room games I've played, while still being very much accessible. For me, I'm going to come in at a 3.5 out of 5. If you are looking for other escape room games, definitely check out the Unlock or Exit series. And then my personal recommendation is always going to be Post Curious. They have some fantastic, more deluxeified experiences that really take you a lot more into the components of things. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.